We've already introduced a couple of faults here in the last couple of sections, and we've seen how to troubleshoot them, how to debug them, exactly what's going on. We've seen an encapsulation mismatch, and here in our CHAP configs, we've seen a password problem. What else could go wrong in a CHAP config? And there's not much there. We haven't configured a lot. We've mostly been debugging and troubleshooting. What else could happen there? What if we had a username issue? What if we had didn't have an entry for a user? Let's see what would happen with that. We'll go ahead and shut S1 down here. And we'll wait for the inevitable. There it goes. And we'll do a no username R3, password CCNA. And we'll do a username. Let's say that we just tap that 3 key twice. We're in a bit of a hurry. We want to get it done. And that's what we're running. Let's see what it looks like. And we get our up message, and we're getting a problem right away. And by golly, this debug is really just talking to us and just saying, hey you, here is the problem. We're also going to be getting these messages every 2 to 4 seconds apart, and you can also see that the link itself is starting to flap. This is what I've been talking about a flapping link. You know, it went down and then it went back up for 2 seconds. So let's go ahead and run a UAll here for undebug all. And anytime you run an undebug all, if you still get information after that, it doesn't mean that the undebug all did not work. It just means that there was more output already in the buffers to show you. And in this particular case, we just got a little bit, but with a more verbose debug, like say debug IP packet, you can turn that sucker off and get 10 more screens of messages. So don't panic if it doesn't cut the information off immediately. Again, this one's really self-explanatory. It's just saying point blank username R3 wasn't found. You know, the challenges worked fine. Even tells you what interface we're on. Serial 1, what we're running CHAP. Challenges went out, challenge came in, username R3 not found, unable to authenticate for peer, what do you want for my life? And there you go. So let's go ahead and shut the interface down again. I'm going to turn that debug back on though. Actually, maybe I don't. I knew there was a reason. I usually do it in that order. T, interface S1, and we're going to do a shut on that now. Now let's do our debug PPP auth now that we fixed that. And we got to fix that command first. So let's do no in front of that. And we got our debug on. And we'll open her up. And there it goes, and now we know that we're seeing exactly what we want to see because we ran a debug when it was working correctly, so we know what we're looking for. And it's 2 challenges, 2 responses, and 2 successes. That is it. I do want to show that flapping link one more time. I know this scroll, there you go. It only did it once, but I've seen it in other times in the same way where it just keeps going up and down every 2 to 4 seconds. And this does get annoying, and this is what I'm talking about with a flapping link. I know I mentioned that in STP, you know, if the ports were flapping, you know, if one was opening and closing and opening and closing. This is what an interface is going to look like when it's flapping, and that's why you want your timestamps, because they are just fantastic. And it's going to tell you how often that's happening as well. So I believe that is it for CHAP. We've seen now what it looks like with our debug PPP authentication, when things are running well, when the password's wrong, and when the username's wrong. And thankfully, that's about all that can go wrong with a CHAP configuration. Before we go to PAP, though, I want to show you one other debug. And there's a reason I like to start you with debug PPP authentication, because there's only so much info there. Let's go ahead and do a shut here on S1 so we can see what happens when we run this other debug. Now you see we've got a couple different debugs here we can run, and frankly there are some here that I've only used in lab environments. BAP protocol transactions, I've never even used that one personally myself. I'll tell you point blank, the ones you're going to use most often in the field and on this exam would be authentication and possibly negotiation. You've seen authentication, you know what's going on there. We're going to run that with PAP as well. It works with both of them. But I want to run debug PPP negotiation and give you a little bonus debug info here as well. So let's do a no shut. And as you can see, this is giving you just a little more information, a couple of screens worth here, and it's changed state to up here at the end, so we know that everything is still fine and dandy. What I wanted to show you, though, I wanted to show you this longer output. And again, this is debug PP negotiation as compared to what we've been running, which is authentication. And you can see we're getting some extra information here about, LCP something or other, which we'll talk about later. And we see authentication proto CHAP and then some magic number. And then right here in the middle of all this, here's your authentication process. So the same information is in here. What debug PPP authentication does basically is just pairs everything else out, because frankly most of your CHAP and PAP problems, your CHAP problems, they're going to be right here with your authentication. It's almost always the simplest thing. It's going to be a bad password or it's going to be a misentered username. 99 out of 100 times. This, you don't have to get fancy with this. Just check this out. Now you know what to look for in the debug output, and it's going to tell you exactly what that problem is. But I did want you to see what the longer negotiation is. And this IPCP, I think we're going to mention this before the end of the section as well. But again, your authentication message is right in the middle of all that. What I'm going to do during the break here is take off everything to do with CHAP on that interface, which of course isn't much. But I'll take that off. I'm going to leave the username entries there, the database, and then we'll work a little bit with PAP and discuss the two and compare them a little bit more on the next video. See you there.